Well, hello. Dave Hill coming at you today with your lesson. This is lesson 10. And I know you've been working hard at home and you've been practicing a lot and getting a lot out of these lessons. And I know I've been having a lot of fun making them and creating the videos for you. So let's just keep up the good work together and we're going to really get somewhere as musicians. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what we're going to do in this lesson. We're going to talk and review some chord voicings and chord shapes so that I can continue to expand your knowledge of some chords as I also write them on in progressions and use them in our lessons. I need to make sure that you understand the chords that I'm writing and the progressions that you're practicing over. So we're going to talk about some of the bar chord shapes and review some of the ones that we've learned and just make sure that you're up to speed on all of these. Okay, so I know you're warming up before you do this lesson, so I'm going to save the warm-up exercise and let you do that at home. But remember, we've done stretching exercises before. We've done sequences. We learned our first sequence a few lessons ago, and that was a major third sequence. So make sure you're doing that, and I'll go back to that in another time. Okay, so you can see over here, I've written out the chord forms that we've been covering up till now. And I want to review these today because I feel it's very important, and it has a lot to do with future lessons we're going to be working on. And as I've said before, the basics are really, really important in your knowledge. The better that you know the basics, the more they apply to the advanced stuff we're going to talk about eventually. So as you recall, one of the first few lessons we talked about the roots, and the roots eventually had chords that we built around them. Well, let's talk about the chords that eventually become movable shapes. This first chord here, pattern 1, as you can see, if you remember correctly, it originated from this first major open string chord that we played, a C chord, right? And we called that a pattern 1 shape. But when it became a movable form, we had to bar our first finger and we basically take the same voicing, but now it's a movable form, right? So the C shape becomes pattern 1 as a movable form like this, right? The root, as you can see, is played there and there. And that makes this a D shape, a D chord, pattern 1. This would therefore be an F chord, a G chord. Wherever this root is, these roots right here become the name of the chord. Okay, so that's a pattern 1 shape. Now, as we move up the neck to the next voicing, check it out. Notice how the root here of this chord is now part of the upper voicing of pattern 2. The lower root is here, but the upper structure is now with our barred third finger, or you can even use your fourth finger. Okay, so that's a pattern 2 shape, and that originated from the A form down here. Okay, so we have G, D, okay, and then carrying on, we go up to pattern 3, and check it out. Here's the top part of pattern 2 now connected right here to pattern 3. And you can see now I've just put on the bottom root here and the third, and then the upper structure is exactly the same part right here. So this is pattern 3, and that, as you recall, came from the G form. Okay, but now it's movable, so I can play that anywhere in the neck, and I've got a movable D shape with this voicing. And that comes in handy a lot. I like this voicing because I can do a lot of stuff around the voicing. There's a lot of little licks you can kind of play. Okay, so that's very handy for a lot of rhythm guitar stuff. Okay, and then as we move up the neck here, the bottom root here now is going to be played with our first finger, and you'll see the familiar bar form of the D chord up here at the 10th fret, and that, as you recall, originated from the open E chord. So very easy to play, a little squished this far up, but you know, you can play it all over the neck, and this is the root right here, and it also right here, and actually the root is also there. I didn't circle it, but there it is. So this is D right here. Okay, and then finally, the last shape of the triads is way up here. Okay, and as you'll know, there's the root right here now on the D string, and then we've got our pattern 5 shape, and you might see already that that originated from the open D form. Now way up here an octave above with our root right here. Now people actually can also see how that there's another note you can play on the bottom if you'd like, and that's going to be right here if you'd like to put that on the bottom. It's not the root, but it's an acceptable chord tone. It's the third. So a lot of people like to play the third on the bottom, and they don't play this on the top anymore. They just play the third, the root, the fifth, and the root again, and they don't play that. So either one, it's good to represent pattern 5. Okay? So keep in mind, these are all major chords. Okay? Now, obviously music has other flavors of harmony besides major chords. We learned in another lesson why a chord is called major and why it's called minor. But the simple fact remains that all these are major chords because they all have roots, thirds, and fifths. And specifically the third, the type of third, is a major third, the major third of the scale. So as you remember now from a previous lesson too, we want to make sure that we can also play these as minor chords. So all we'd have to do to make these minor chords is simply find the third of each of these chords and modify it to a minor third, basically play it a half step down, and you will have minor chords. Okay, so let's erase this for a second and replace that with minor, and I'm gonna make them minor chords simply by doing this. Erase this note right here, and I'm going to have to erase this up top here because I'm not going to be able to play that anyway. And now I'm going to have a minor chord like that. Check out how that sounds. Here's the major before. Now it becomes minor. It's a little difficult, but you can do it. Right? You notice right away the sound is minor because I took the third that was right here and I moved it down to the minor third. And now we've got a nice voicing, a little tight, a little stretched down there, but if you played it maybe higher, you feel that it's pretty doable. Okay, so this is D minor. Okay, once again, on the next voicing, we got to find the third of the chord. So if I review my voicing, 1, 5, 1, the third is right there. So I'm going to get rid of that because that's not going to work if it's going to be a minor chord. And I'll simply put it right here. And now I've got a minor chord. Okay, so there was major, and here's minor. That's a nice voicing. So minor, minor. And then as we go up the neck here to the next shape, we can see that there's a third here, and there's a third here in this chord. And this is going to be an issue here. We're going to have to figure out how to play that because you'll find that it doesn't make sense to play the minor third here, and then you get a major third on the top. That doesn't sound good. So what we end up doing here is we really modify this chord quite a bit. We don't use the bottom part of the chord as much on a minor form. We actually do this. We actually play the minor third right here, and then we bar with our fourth finger. So in reality, we don't use this. And we have a root focus on the top here. Okay, so that's what happens. The major shape of pattern 3 really becomes more usable as a minor chord in this form. We just don't use the bottom part of it. It's still just as much of a minor chord, but we just don't have to play the root on the bottom. The root is on the top in this case. That makes it more playable. So there's your minor chord. Okay, moving on to pattern 4, where we would have played major right here. We'll know pretty quickly that the major third was right there, and there's only one of them to deal with, so it's pretty easy to fix this one and make it minor. We're just going to bar across the neck right here, and the minor third happens inside of this bar now. So there's our minor chord, totally playable, no problem there. And then we're going to do something here. It's going to make this the minor chord by taking the third that was right here, putting it right there. And now there's our minor chord on a pattern 5 shape. which would have been played down here in an open form. Okay? So now we had major chords before. Now you can see all we did is switch the major chords to minor chords, was affect the third and adjust that so we have really 5 shapes of major and 5 of minor of bar chords. And that's really important to have these shapes, because not only do they work great for a lot of rhythm guitar situations, but they're key also to understanding the layout of the fingerboard when it comes time to see scales and arpeggios and other types of chords besides just the major and minor chords, more sophisticated chords. Okay, so let's just review each shape and make it major and then minor, just so you at home can practice. So remember, we started off with D major, okay, and we made it D minor by taking the third down, and now we have D minor. Okay, we had D major here, pattern 2, and we made it minor by making it minor here. We have pattern 2, D minor. We had D major here, pattern 3. Okay, and when we modified it to minor, we had to fix it a little bit to make it like this. To make it minor, pattern 4 major was about like this, and then pattern 4 minor. We ended up dropping out the second finger, and we'd bar to create the minor third there. On this form, we have a major chord, pattern 5, way up here, and just to flip a few fingers around, we can make it minor. Okay, so those are the 5 chords that represent major and minor, and we're going to use them now in a progression. Okay, here we are now, looking at our progression that we're going to utilize for practice for the bar chords that we just covered and reviewed. Okay, so you can see above here, I've not only written the chords out of the progression, but I've got some rhythm information as well. And I wrote that just because I thought you might want to also practice your rhythm reading that we've covered as well. So basically, when you see this kind of information right here, this is just simply saying play 8th notes. This represents 8th note hash marks, which means it's going to sound like this. If the quarter note were right here, the beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Right? And if I have them separated like this, they're still 8th notes. The only reason I did that is because I was going to have a space on the downbeat of 3 where I didn't want you to play. So that would maybe sound like this then. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Notice I didn't play on 3 there. That's the rest. That's an 8th note rest. Okay? So it's a simple rhythm that makes the progression a little bit more interesting. Okay, so let's take a look at the chord forms that we're going to use. And you'll probably notice that with the 5 shapes that you've learned already in major and minor that I've referred to, there's a number of places that you could play the chords, right? There's not one way to play this progression where it's more correct than another. There's just options, okay? You could, for example, play the B major right here. You could also play it right here. You could play it right here, right? You could play it right up here if you wanted to, right? None of them are wrong. It's just a matter of what you prefer. I kind of like the sound of the lower B down here because there's a little bit more bottom end to it. So I probably would start the B chord down here. I wouldn't probably start it here. It's too high and there's not enough low end. So we'll start it here, and then from that point you could practice maybe using your pattern 1D shape and go to that one. Okay? If you want to take that up a whole step, just play it again now in E, and then you could play the G chord here. So then it would look like this. Okay, that sounds pretty good. If you wanted to try it another way, you could start with the pattern 4 shape right here. Pattern 4 of the B chord right here. And then you could practice using that one. So then you would go pattern 4 maybe, pattern 2D, and then move that up to the E form, and then maybe use pattern 1G. Right, so you'd have. Still the same chords, it's just a different arrangement of the voicings, okay, and just subtly different in sound. both perfectly acceptable. Okay, so we do this. I didn't write this down, but let's make a note of this. Let's play this part 4 times. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next section where I wanted to incorporate some minor chords. And you'll see now I've written E minor, D major, C major, B minor, A minor, G major, and then D again. So essentially I've changed keys on you there. We started off in kind of a B sound or B key, B minor, B major, and I've definitely gone to G major or E minor on that other progression. But that's what makes it sound kind of interesting. It modulates for a second. So let's review what we could play here. We could start off in a pattern 2 E minor, keep that going down to a pattern 2 D major. Maybe you could find your C chord right here in pattern 3 to get that going, and then move that into pattern 4 for B minor, and then keep that in pattern 4 for the A minor. Also for G major, keep that right there, and then maybe use pattern 1 for D and E. Okay, so that would maybe then sound like this. Okay, what I'm trying to show you there by writing the D just a little ahead, I'm trying to line it up over the D, over the and of 2. I want you to anticipate the D chord, so it would be like this, really. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, so we have 2 different contrasting sections now with little changes in the rhythm. Okay, so why don't we try that at home now, and let's kind of play along with my loop station here, like I like to do, and give you a chance to play the rhythm at home. Let's play it. Actually, before I hit the loop station, let's do it one time slowly together, and then I'll add that in a minute. Okay, so here we go. 3, 4. Okay, so that's basically what it's going to sound like. Let's add some bass and drums now. Okay, let's bring in the band now, shall we? It was cool without the band, but now that we've practiced it, we're going to be good with playing along with the band. So here we go, check it out. Rock and roll. 3, 4. Wasn't that fun? Just a simple chord progression utilizing our major and our major and minor triads, but just because it has a little bit of contrast between 2 sections, it just sounds great. Sounds like music. There's a little bit of rhythm in there, and it's fun to play along with. All right, so make sure you practice that for your bar chords. I also suggest finding other progressions on your own to practice to, transcribing, studying some songs off the radio that you like, or maybe getting a songbook that has a lot of songs in it of these kind of chords that you can also drill and work out on. Okay, so I hope you've learned a lot from that, and practice that at home, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, see you later.